After studying this module, you would be able to learn about the key concepts of the person-centered approach to counseling, understand the counseling process involved, examine the counseling techniques, procedures and intervention strategies of Rogers' approach, and evaluate the contributions of the person-centered perspective in counseling. The person-centered theory of Carl R. Rogers 1902 to 1987 is one of the most popular in the fields of psychology, counseling and education. Rogers' perceptions of people and of how a supportive environment can assist in their development have had an immense impact on a wide variety of professions and on parenting. This approach to people was a major deviation from the psychoanalytic and behavioral models for working with people that were predominant in the early part of the 20th century. Person-centered theory offered a new way to look at individuals and their development, as well as how people can be helped to change. From this frame of reference, people were viewed as fully in charge of their lives and inherently motivated to improve themselves. The responsibility for personal behaviors and the ability to choose to change them were also seen as belonging fully to the individual. Here was a way to view and deal with human beings that did not rely on other people like counselors, psychologists, parents, teachers, etc. as the primary directors of change. People could control their own change if the right conditions were offered. Rogers saw all individuals as having inherent qualities that made nurturing possible. Attempting to change basic personality characteristics or behaviors was not necessary. He believed people saw the world from their own unique perspective, which is referred to as a phenomenological view of the world people held. They were all continually attempting to actualize their best and most productive selves. This positive and optimistic view of human beings is often challenged by those who call attention to the unlimited opportunities for observing people as they think and act in ways that are harmful to themselves and others. But Rogers believed these thoughts and actions were primarily reflections of a distorted view of oneself and the world, distortions caused by trying to meet the expectations of others rather than trying to actualize one's own self. The origins of Rogers' beliefs, their development into a major helping process, and an examination of that process will serve as a foundation for these two modules, Module 7 and Module 8. Information on the counselor's role in providing interventions and the methods used to carry out that role will then provide the practical base for beginning to implement the process.
View of human nature. The person-centered perception of people is based on four key beliefs. First, people are trustworthy. Second, people innately move towards self-actualization and health. Third, people have the inner resources to move themselves in positive direction. And fourth, people respond to their uniquely perceived world. The activation of these characteristics in a person's external environment brings about the most desirable aspects of development. Trustworthiness of people. Person-centered counselors must treat their clients as trustworthy, or there will be no reason to allow them to take a leadership role in the helping relationship. From this point of view, words such as good, constructive, and trustworthy describes natural characteristics of human beings, although people also appear to take actions that demonstrate the opposite. These inappropriate actions are taken when the individual's ideal view of self does not match the real self. Individuals use defensive thoughts and actions to protect themselves from having to observe that they are not living the lives they believe they should. Such actions are not deceitful so much as they are direct actions based on conflicting perceptions of a person's world. All individuals are trying to improve and to act in the world as they see it in as honorable a manner as possible. Movement towards actualization. Human beings are viewed by the person centered counselors as always striving to obtain the maximum amount from them. They seek any means to develop all their abilities in ways that maintain or enhance the organism. This is the driving force in the positive development of the individual. It clearly moves the individual away from control by others based on conditions of worth and towards autonomy and self control. The movement towards autonomy and self actualization provides individuals rather than outside person with the primary motivational strength behind development. This energy source is also seen as potentially more influential than environmental factors such as socioeconomic status, hunger, or danger, which also affect how the individual perceives or seeks self actualization. Inner resources. Person centered theory is based on two fairly well accepted principles of human dynamics. The first principle states that people always have much more potential than they use most of the time. The second emphasizes that success is found in the journey rather than in a preconceived goal. Person centered counselors must believe in these principles if they are to help the clients recognize and accept their own abilities. Individually perceived world. Person centered view recognizes that events will be perceived differently by different people. Two adults argue and relationship break down because each side perceives what is right to be different from the other side's perception. The person-centered view of these examples is that individuals or group relate to the world and their own actions from a unique context or phenomenological perspective. Therefore, words, behaviors, feelings, and beliefs are selected to match the specialized view of the world held by each individual. The idea that no two people perceive the world in exactly the same way explains much of the variation in the previous three concepts. Cultural background and environmental factors play large parts in this variation, and individual perception of and reactions to the experiences create even more differences. A person centered view of human development gives attention to external factors that affect psychological development in addition to critical internal forces. Even as infants, people make choices that induce growth and actualize potential. They reject experiences that are perceived as contrary to their well being. However, these naturalistic ways of making choices become confused as a developing person recognizes that other individuals may provide or withhold love based on how well the person assimilates values and behavior sets by others. This recognition can move individuals away from using their own best judgment to make personal choices and promote a method that requires taking actions based on the presumed desires of the others. The two theoretical concepts used to explain this aspect of development are unconditional positive regard and conditions of worth. Individuals who are given unconditional positive regard by significant people in their lives receive recognition of their positive nature, including their motivation and ability to become increasingly effective human beings. The worth and value of the individual are not questioned in the case, although specific behaviors or beliefs can be rejected as inappropriate. Individuals who are given and can recognize unconditional positive regard being provided to them feel permitted to continue trusting themselves as positive human beings. The belief is conveyed to them that they will make errors of judgment and behavior, but that as positive individuals they will also strive to examine themselves continually and be able to take actions for their own improvement. Being provided with the unconditional positive regard helps individuals to continue seeking their own development with the confidence that they will become increasingly effective human beings. Many times, the regard and love offered by others has strings attached. Children faced with the type of love that is conditioned on doing only those things that a parent wants, and where differences or mistakes are judged to be unacceptable, can come to believe that they are only good, loved, cared for, fed, or valued if they do just as others believe they should. These conditions of worth pressure developing persons to devalue their inherent potential for making choice and for growth. They begin looking for directions and decisions that originate from external sources instead of trusting their more natural internal reactions to their environment. This process moves developing individuals away from the confidence in their ability to run their own lives and push them to seek validation based on the lives of others who appear to be more positive than they are. The core of person centered theory is a set of beliefs about people and relationships rather than a series of programmable verbal and behavioral techniques. Counselors interested in implementing this theory must look first to themselves and their perception of others rather than to what specific behaviors ought to be performed. This is a challenging task, particularly for new practitioners who are seeking to find out what they should do and to what extent they do things well. The following constructs are essential beliefs involved in person centered approach. Practitioners must have a clear perception of them before they can implement a person centered approach effectively. First, practitioners must recognize that no two people see the world exactly alike. Counselors must recognize that whatever they personally believe reality to be will be different from the client's perspective and that each client will have a unique perspective. It is imperative to understand the client's perspective as thoroughly as possible. Second, counselors' empathetic understanding of the client is critical. It involves two tasks: understanding and accurately conveying that understanding to the client in words and actions. Third, practitioners who demonstrate faith in the whole person rather than denigrating clients for mistakes of behavior allow their clients the freedom to explore their world without fear of rejection. Fourth, counselors' confidence in the client is paramount. This position contrasts with the other's view of human nature that do not allow the practitioner to trust because client difficulties are seen as weaknesses and deficiencies that stand in the way of personal progress unless the practitioner corrects them. Person centered clients are treated as effective human beings who are able to grow and succeed regardless of the nature of their difficulties. Perceived world of the client may not approximate the world sought. It is a common occurrence. For example, to find that abusive persons have experienced an abusive environment. They have often struggled inside themselves, verbally and even physically, to reject the unnatural, hurtful, and untrusting aspects of the environment. But at the same point, they come to believe that this is just the way things are because others accept the environment. They take actions based on the acceptance of this environment by others, only to find their action conflicts with the receiving and giving of love, caring, and self trust they naturally desire. The result is increasing levels of incongruence both within themselves and between them and in their relationships with others. And fifth, practitioners make efforts to increase congruence in the clients rather than to directly reduce anxiety. Congruent persons trust their view of the world and their ability to act on their positive nature. They feel confident about reacting in the present moment because of a belief in their organism's ability to discriminate between appropriate and inappropriate behaviors. People around them then generally verify this self trust because The actions of the congruent persons tend to be beneficial both personally and socially. Congruent people are not infallible, but they do have the ability to recognize and use mistakes to grow without devaluing themselves or others. The counseling process, counseling goals. The person centered approach aims toward a greater degree of independence and integration of the individual. In Rogers' view, the aim of counseling is not merely to solve problems. Rather, it is to assist clients in their growth process so that they can better cope with problems they are now facing and with future problems. Rogers writes that people who enter counseling often ask, how can I discover my real self? How can I become what I deeply wish to become? How can I get behind my facades and become myself? The underlying aim of counseling is to provide a climate conducive to help the individual become a fully functioning person. Before clients are able to work towards the goal, they must first get behind the masks they wear, which they develop through the process of socialization. Clients come to recognize that they have lost contact with themselves by using these facades. In a climate of safety in the counseling session, they also come to realize that there are other possibilities. Rogers describes people who are becoming increasingly actualized as having A. An openness to experience, B. A trust in themselves, C. An internal source of evaluation, and D. A willingness to continue growing. Encouraging these characteristics is the basic goal of a person centered approach. These four characteristics provide a general framework for understanding the direction of therapeutic movement. The counselor does not choose specific goals for the client. The cornerstone of person centered theory is the view that clients in a relationship with a facilitating counselor have the capacity to define and clarify their own goals. Although it is easy to give lip service to the concept of clients finding their own way, it takes considerable respect for clients and faith on the therapist's part to encourage clients to listen to themselves and follow their own directions, particularly when they make choices that are not what the counselor hoped for. The role of person centered counselors is rooted in their ways of being and attitudes, not in techniques designed to get the client to do something. Research on person centered counseling seems to indicate that the attitude of counselor, rather than their knowledge, theories, or techniques, facilitate personality change in the client. Basically, counselors use themselves as an instrument of change. When they encounter the client on a person to person level, their role is to be without roles. Their function is to establish a therapeutic climate that helps the client grow. The person centered counselor thus create a helping relationship in which each client experiences the necessary freedom to explore areas of their life that are now either denied to awareness or distorted. They become less defensive and more open to possibilities within themselves and in the world. First and foremost, the therapist must be willing to be real in the relationship with the clients. Instead of viewing clients in a preconceived diagnostic categories, the therapist meets them on a moment to moment experiential basis and enters their world. Through the counselor's attitude of genuine caring, respect, acceptance, and understanding, clients are able to loosen their defenses and rigid perceptions and move to a higher level of personal functioning. Clients' experiences in counseling. Therapeutic change depends on the client's perceptions both of their own experience in counseling and of the counselor's basic attitudes. If the counselor creates a climate conducive to self exploration, clients have opportunity to explore the full range of their experience, which includes their feelings, beliefs, behaviors, and worldview. Clients come to the counselor in a state of incongruence. That is, a discrepancy exists between their self perception and their experience in reality. For example, Vivek, a school student, may see himself as a future physician, yet his below average grades might exclude him from medical college. The discrepancy between how Vivek sees himself or how he would like to view himself and the reality of his poor academic performance may result in anxiety and personal vulnerability, which can provide the necessary motivation to enter counseling. Vivek must perceive that a problem exists, or at least that he is uncomfortable enough with his present psychological adjustment to want to explore possibilities for change. One reason clients seek counseling is a feeling of basic helplessness, powerlessness, and an inability to make decisions or effectively direct their own lives. They may hope to find the way through the guidance of the counselor. Within the person centered framework, however, clients soon learn that they can be responsible for themselves in the relationship and that they can learn to be freer by using the relationship to gain greater self understanding. As counseling processes, the clients are able to explore a wider range of beliefs and feelings. They can express their fears, anxiety, guilt, shame, hatred, anger, and other emotions that had deemed too negative to accept and incorporate into their self structure. With counseling, people distort less and move to a greater acceptance and integration of conflicting and confusing feelings. They increasingly discover aspects within themselves that had been kept hidden. As clients feel understood and accepted, their defensiveness is less necessary, and they become more open to their experience. Because they are not as threatened, feel safer, and are less vulnerable, they become more realistic, perceives others with greater accuracy, and become better able to understand and accept others. They come to appreciate themselves more as they are, and their behavior shows more flexibilities and creativity. They become less oriented to meeting others' expectation, and thus they begin to behave in ways that are truer to themselves. These individuals empower themselves to direct their own lives instead of looking outside of themselves for answers. They move in the direction of being more in contact with what they are experiencing at the present moment, less bound by the past, freer to make decisions, and increasingly trusting in themselves to manage their own lives. In short, their experience in counseling is like throwing off self imposed shackles that had kept them in a psychological prison. With increased freedom, they tend to become more mature psychologically and more actualized. Rogers formulated his hypothesis of the necessary and sufficient conditions for change, which dealt with the core conditions promoting therapeutic progress. The basic hypothesis of person centered approach is summarized in this sentence: if I can provide a certain type of relationship, the other person will discover within himself or herself the capacity to use that relationship for growth and change, and personal development will occur. Rogers hypothesizes further that significant positive personality change does not occur except in a relationship. What are the characteristics of the therapeutic relationship that are conducive to creating a suitable psychological climate in which the client will experience the freedom necessary to initiate personality change? According to Rogers, these are necessary and sufficient conditions for personality change to occur. First, two people are in psychological contact. Second, the first, whom we shall term the client, is experiencing incongruency or is anxious. Third, the second person, whom we shall term the counselor, is congruent or integrated in the relationship. Fourth, The counselor experiences unconditional positive regard and acceptance for the client. Fifth, the counselor experiences an empathetic understanding of the client's internal frame of reference and strives to communicate this experience to the client. And finally, the communication of the counselor's empathetic understanding and acceptance is to a minimal degree achieved. Rogers' hypothesis that no other conditions are necessary. If the six conditions exist over some period of time, constructive personality change will occur. The conditions do not vary according to the client type. The counselor need not to have any specialized knowledge. Accurate psychological diagnosis is not necessary with effective counseling. Rogers admits that his theory was striking and radical. His formulation has generated considerable controversy. From Rogers' perspective, the client-counselor relationship is characterized by equality. Counselors do not keep their knowledge a secret or attempt to mystify the counseling process. The process of change in the client depends to a large degree on the quality of this equal relationship. As clients experience the counselor listening in an accepting way to them, they gradually learn how to listen acceptingly to themselves, as they find the counselor caring for and valuing them. Even the aspects that have been hidden and regarded as negative. Clients begin to see worth and value in themselves. As they experience the realness of the therapist, clients drop many of their masks and are real with both themselves and the counselor. Congruence or genuineness. Of the three characteristics, congruence is the most important. Congruence implies that counselors are real, that is, they are genuine, integrated, and authentic during the counseling hour. They are without a false front. Their inner experiences and outer expressions of that experience match, and they can openly express feelings, thoughts, reactions, and attitudes that are present in the relationship with the client. Through authenticity, the counselor serves as a model of a human being struggling towards greater realness. Being congruent might necessitate the expression of anger, frustration, liking, attraction, concern, boredom, annoyance, and a range of other feelings in the relationship. This does not mean that counselors should impulsively share all their reactions, for self disclosure must also be appropriate and well timed. A pitfall is that counselors can try too hard to be genuine, sharing because one thinks it will be good for the client, without being genuinely moved to express something regarded as personal, can be incongruent. Person centered counseling stresses that counseling will be inhibited if the counselor feels one way about the client but acts in a different way. Hence, if the counselor either dislikes or disapproves of the client but feigns acceptance, counseling will not work. Rogers' concept of congruence does not imply that only a fully self actualized counselor can be effective in counseling, because counselors are human. They cannot be expected to be fully authentic. If counselors are congruent in their relationships with the clients, however, the process of counseling will get underway. Congruence exists on a continuum rather than on an all or nothing basis, as is true for all three characteristics: unconditional positive regard and acceptance. The second attitude counselors need to communicate is a deep and genuine caring for the client as a person. The caring is unconditional. It is not contaminated by evaluation or judgment of the client's feelings, thoughts, and behavior as good or bad. It is important that counselors' caring be non possessive. If the caring stems from their own need to be liked and appreciated, constructive change in the clients is inhibited. Counselors communicate through their behavior that they value their clients as they are and that clients are free to have feelings and experiences without risking the loss of their counselor's acceptance. Acceptance is the recognition of clients' rights to have their own beliefs and feelings. It is not the approval of all behavior. Accurate empathic understanding. One of the main tasks of the counselor is to understand clients' experience and feelings sensitively and accurately as they are revealed in the moment to moment interaction during the counseling session. The counselor strives to sense clients' subjective experience, particularly in the here and now. The aim is to encourage client to get closer to themselves, to feel more deeply and intensely, and to recognize and resolve the incongruity that exists within themselves. Empathic understanding implies that the counselor will sense client's feeling as if they were his or her own, without becoming lost in those feelings. It is important to understand that accurate empathy goes beyond recognition of obvious feelings to a sense of the less clearly experienced feelings of the clients. Part of empathic understanding is the counselor's ability to reflect the experiences of the clients. One of the functions of counselor reflection is to encourage and enable clients to become more reflective themselves. Counselor empathy results in clients' self understanding and clarification of their beliefs and worldviews. Empathy is not an artificial technique that counselors routinely use. Rather, empathy is a deep and subjective understanding of the client with the client. Counselors are able to share the client's subjective world by tuning in to their own feelings that are like the client's feelings. Yet, counselors must not lose their own separateness. Then, constructive change is likely to occur. According to David Kane, empathy, especially emotionally focused empathy, helps client first pay attention and value their experiencing, second, process their experiences cognitively and bodily, third, see old experiences in new ways, fourth, modify their self perceptions and their worldview, and fifth, increase their confidence in their perceptions, in making decisions, and in following a course of action.
Now let us summarize this module. Carl Rogers first developed person-centered counseling in the 1940s and 1950s as a humanistic and phenomenological approach to treatment that values the dignity and worth of all people as well as their potential to resolve their difficulties. The primary source of healing in person-centered treatment is the establishment by the counselor of the core conditions of congruence, unconditional positive regard, and empathy. By accepting clients as they are and providing a safe environment for them to explore their feelings, treatment moves along a path of growth towards actualization of the person's potential, helping him or her to become more fully functioning and self-actualized. This approach, which focuses on the present rather than past problems or future concerns, transformed thinking about counseling and psychotherapy and provided the first comprehensive alternative to Freudian psychoanalysis and the directiveness of the early behaviorists. Through his own experience with clients and his commitment to scientific research and writing, Rogers delineated the most important strategy for change: the establishment of a collaborative counseling or therapeutic alliance. Rogers envisioned his theory as just the beginning of a theoretical orientation on which future theorists would build. His expectations are being fulfilled in the present with Eugene Gendlin's, a student of Rogers, experiential focusing, emotion focused therapy developed by Greenberg et al., and motivational interviewing developed by Miller and Rolnick, and in the theoretical underpinnings of transpersonal psychology.